politics or current affairs unless it has something to do with someone falling on Dancing with the Stars, but Syria has been in the news lately, and with good reason. Nobody in their right mind wants to go to war. The facts and history surrounding the crisis in Syria run deep and are extremely complicated. And that's why I'm here, to help the young ones as well as the intellectually challenged to understand who the key players are and why they are important. To start, Syria's civil war erupted after protests against President Bashar al-Assad's regime in March of 2011. Now, al-Assad is known for his not-so-legal tactics and human rights violations. I know this is Bitches and Hoes edition, but someone has to be the pimp, and this guy fits the bill. Then there's Ahmad Jarba, the leader of the Syrian opposition. He's been jailed a couple of times for opposing Pimp al-Assad and also helps arm the rebels. He appears to be one of the good guys for now, so to be safe, we'll call him Vice Squad. Next, there's a Free Syrian Army. Now, these guys used to be Pimp al-Assad's army hoes, but they defected to the opposition, making them bitches. I know I'm not getting any of these pronunciations right, but it is the Bitches and Hoes edition. Another key player is Jabhat al-Nusra, who has claimed responsibility for suicide bombings on Syrian government targets and has ties to al-Qaeda, who has been a pain-in-the-ass bitch to the US, but since al-Nusra supposedly works for al-Qaeda, that makes him a hoe. Then in walks Hezbollah. Hezbollah members are fighting in Syria against Islamic extremists who pose a threat to Lebanon, but Syria has been a main backer of Hezbollah, which makes them a hoe. Next, there's the UN's weapons inspectors. Now, these guys are always looking for those pesky chemical weapons that no one supposedly has. I don't know how all those hundreds of people died. After Pimp al-Assad agreed to their investigation, their convoy was hit by sniper fire. I don't know where those bullets came from. So since the weapons inspectors are serious pain in the ass, we'll call them a bitch. Now we come to the good old US of A. Just so you know, chemical weapons, real or imagined, are technically not allowed into the rules of war according to the Geneva Convention. That's the piece of paper all these bitches and hoes signed when we were kicking it old school. So any use of chemical weapons, hereby known as crank, LA ice, or go-go juice, the US ain't typically down with that kind of bullshit and now wants to get in the gang fight because that kind of crack is whack. And that brings us to Russia, one of the biggest players. In the past, Russia has been supplying arms to the Syrian government, making Syria Russia's bitch. However, when Syria used the fake-ass go-go juice, that's when Russia supposedly backed off. However, Pimp Putin said that the US and Russia's positions on the matter didn't coincide, but still wanted to stop the violence. However, once the go-go juice controversy escalated, Russia didn't want to punish Syria, and that makes Russia a hoe. Now we come to Britain, who voted against a military response in Syria. Even though Britain has been the US's bitch since the Revolutionary War, that was a long time ago, yo. They're probably the smartest bitches on the block, if y'all know what I mean. Next, there's the UN Security Council. Now, Russia and China have blocked efforts by Western countries to pass sanctions on the go-go juice, and the Council is basically deadlocked on how to proceed. This makes the UN Security Council a hoe because bitch got her hands tied. Enter Egypt. Sort of. Egypt's got 99 problems and Syria ain't one of them. They refuse to back a military strike and instead are urging peace talks. In this case, Egypt is neither a bitch or a hoe, they're just parlayed until further notice. Now, Turkey and Syria have been at it for decades, and the latest blow was in May of this year when Syria allegedly set off car bombs at a Turkish border town. Turkey will defend its turf by force if necessary and has a NATO posse to back them up, making it a bitch to Syria. Now, Israel says that Syria has the go-go juice and has launched an airstrike. Israel is definitely a bitch and will continue to be a bitch until Syria becomes Israel's hoe. Then there's Iraq. Iraqi soldiers ambushed Syrian soldiers inside Iraqi territory. I don't know what they were doing there. Trying to borrow a cup of sugar? Iraq fears that if Pimp al-Assad is toppled, it would create a new path for extremists and destabilize the Middle East. As if it were stabilized to begin with. I think at this point, Iraq is a hoe because, like it or not, it's probably going to be drawn into Syria's civil war. Lastly, there's Saudi Arabia, who backs the Syrian opposition groups, supplies arms, and has posses in Qatar and Turkey. In this case, Saudi Arabia is a bitch because Syria ain't down with that shit. Alright, I hope this cleared up some of the confusion. Stay tuned for another edition of Bitches and Hoes. Next time, we'll take a look at the White House, Wall Street, and Ben Affleck as Batman. Hating on something? Comment below, and if I don't hate it, I'll make a video of it.